pound for pound, John Keats is probably the strongest English poet since Shakespeare for the virtuosity of his language, for his flexibility, for the twists that he could get the English language to take in terms of rhyme and meter and the subtlety of meaning and the contrasting interpretations you can have within even just a single pair of words. It's phenomenal. He is particularly attractive for the Romantic era in that he had the audacity to go and die at 26 years old. So of everything we have for him, it's just a sense of what could have been if he had lived. He was very ill for pretty much, for most of his life. His family died. His father left him very young. They were fairly poor. He did get a bit of an education, although he didn't go to Oxford or college or anything like that. He, he trained initially as a doctor and was trying to set himself up in that. But his mom died of tuberculosis when he was fairly young, followed by his younger brother, also of tuberculosis, and sure enough, he died of tuberculosis. And it is a particularly difficult and wasting disease that just devastated him in the prime of his life. And it's just, on the one hand, it's very tragic that somebody cut down at such a moment with such a talent, but also that sense of impending mortality that was just hunting him down, in his phrase, feeds his work and gives it a resonance and a depth that few 26-year-olds could ever really dream to match. He works in a number of different formats, a number of different poetic meters. He does an awful lot of his best work in the sonnet and the ode. The sonnet, particularly significant. It's been coming back so far. It fell out of some fashion in the Enlightenment as a confection of artificiality. It was a little too overwrought with the complicated rhyme scheme, and we don't need that. So the Enlightenment poets like Pope tended to go much more for the simple closed couplet, and well, it starts coming back, and Keats does a lot of really fantastic work in the sonnet. One of his some of his best known include, well, on first looking at the Chapman's Homer, a friend loans him a book, and perhaps he had read some Homer before. Pope did an excellent translation of it, but it was very much an Enlightenment translation of it. And then George Chapman comes out in the early 1600s, and he has a different take on it. He has a somewhat more raw, and for Keats, a more appropriately archaic take. Much have I travelled in the realms of gold, and many goodly states and kingdoms seen. Round many western islands have I been, which bards in fealty to Apollo hold. Oft of one wide expanse had I been told, that deep-browed Homer ruled in his demesne. Yet did I never breathe its pure serene, till I heard Chapman speak out loud and bold. Then felt I, like some watcher of the skies, when a new planet swims into his ken, or like a stout Cortez, when with eagle eyes he stared at the Pacific, and all his men looked at one another with a wild surmise, silent upon the peak in Darien. Yeah, he reads this more majestic, more bold version of Homer. Popes had been a little too polite, had been a little too reserved, and you get Keats coming in contact with something that is more perhaps primitive, that of course appeals to the romantic in him, the attraction of the rough, of the unpolished, of the primal in all of us and in art, and that really just grabs him. You see some of the same in on seeing the Elgin marbles. The Elgin marbles were a series of frieze sculptures that get attached to buildings that had been found in Greece and by the English, essentially. And the English just saw them lying around in the rain and said, hey, these are worth something. So they brought them back to England and put them in the British Museum, where if you're ever in England or in London, go see them. They're fantastic. But they have been a hotspot of, international controversy for some time. Greece wants them back, feels that England stole them. They have a good case for that. England says, well, no, we rescued them. We saved them. You had them just laying around in the rain. They were going to be ruined by the elements. So we preserved them, and we're studying them. And that's kind of what the English did all throughout the age of exploration. Go around the world, collect treasures, bring them back, and study them. But, that's also stealing them. What have you. They are spectacular to see. When I first wandered into a room in the British Museum and saw them on the wall, I was like, whoa. It's an enormous... it's just scenes of ancient Greece, from the time, of warriors and the people, and just this miraculous tableau almost of ancient Greek life. But anyway, on scene here, same thing, coming up against something that is primitive and really transports him to a different world. My spirit is too weak. Mortality weighs heavily on me like unwilling sleep, and each imagined pinnacle and steep of godlike hardship tells me I must die like a sick eagle looking at the sky. Yet 'tis a gentle luxury to weep, that I have not the cloudy winds to keep fresh for the opening of the morning eye. Such dim-conceived glories of the brain bring round the heart in an undescribable feud. So do these wonders a most dizzy pain that mingles Grecian grandeur with the rude wasting of old time, with the billowy main, a sun, a shadow of a magnitude. So here he's contemplating the wasting away of those same marbles, of those same works of art, of what is precious being exposed to time and its wasting effects, the wasting of old time, the destruction of something precious, which is what he is experiencing. He is dying, and everything that is precious in him is wasting away. My spirit is too weak. Mortality weighs heavily on me, like unwilling sleep. He can feel his life slipping away, and he just doesn't want to go. One of his more romantic pieces, one of his more clearly identified romantic titles, is to one who has been long in city pent. Now, he was born in London. He lived most of his life in London. He really only left England at the very end of his life when his doctors told him, you're not going to survive another English winter, so you better get out of town and head south. So he traveled to London. He traveled to Rome, and he ended up dying there. They were just probably buying a couple of weeks or months. He was in pretty rough shape by then. But he goes to he spends his entire life in London, and that doesn't prevent him from appreciating, as he sees what is happening in the poetic world around him with Romanticism and its discovery of nature. He lived a very full life just in reading. To one who has been long in city pent, 'tis very sweet to look into the fair and open faces of heaven, to breathe a prayer full in the smile of the blue firmament. Who is more happy when, with heart's content fatigued, he sinks into some pleasant lair of wavy grass and reads a debonair and gentle tale of love and languishment, returning home at evening with an ear catching the notes of Philomel, an eye watching the sailing cloudlet's bright career. He mourns that day so soon has glided by, even like the passage of an angel's tear that falls through the clear ether silently. Again, you've got the specter of death clouding everything. The idea that this time is precious, and he mourns that day, mourns the passage of time. This is a very deliberate word choice there, mourns, because it is a sense of loss and it's not coming back. And he has very few days he knows, so every day is precious. And here he is reflecting on how a day spent not out necessarily, running through the woods or swimming in a lake or, doing any of the active things that you can do out in the country, but just lying around in the grass reading a book. It's what he could do. But clearly, that act of lying around reading a book in that particular setting affected him. So he breathed in, and breath is very important to a tuberculous guy. He breathed in his surroundings and appreciated it to the greatest degree he could, because he has to appreciate everything. He doesn't get that much. It's a remarkable note that he strikes in there, where in just being alive to your surroundings and letting them give you whatever they can offer is it's very sweet. That mortality never leaves him, though. When I have fears that I may cease to be, when I have fears that I may cease to be, before my pen has gleaned my teeming brain, before the high-piled books in charactery hold like rich garners the full ripened grain, when I behold upon the night's starred face huge cloudy symbols of a high romance, and think that I may never live to trace their shadows with the magic hand of chance, and when I feel, fair creature of an hour, that I shall never look upon thee more, never have relish in thy fairy power of unreflecting love, then on the shore of the wide world I stand alone, and think till love and fame to nothingness do sink. He's seeing futility. He's seeing his own mortality. He's seeing the end is near. And when these moments strike, when he recognizes that he's not going to be able to enjoy the worldly contact that he has. It comes as a crash. I stand alone and think till love and fame to nothingness do sink. He has been thinking in terms of writing, of the fame that comes from writing. He, before high-piled books in character, hold like rich garners the full ripened grain. When I behold upon the night's starred face huge cloudy symbols of high romance, when he's imagining everything he could write, everything that he could capture, and it's all slipping away. And he recognizes that all of that is nothing. To nothingness do sink. Love and fame. Because it's split in two halves, essentially, this poem. And at the beginning, as you hear, he is reflecting on the power of fame and what he can do with his talent for writing and poetry. And the second, when he is considering love. And when I feel fair creature of an hour that I shall never look upon thee more, never have relish in the fairy power. Fairies, magical creatures, romance, fairy power of unreflecting love. Those mean so much to him. But then in the awareness of death, in the awareness that his life is ending, it just all falls away. To nothingness do sink. Because he realizes, to his horror, I believe, on the shore of the wide world, I stand alone. He doesn't want to be. That sense of isolation, that sense of loneliness. Remember, tuberculosis, and again, don't lean too hard on biography, but tuberculosis is a highly contagious disease of the lungs. And it slowly kills the lungs. And in the process, you cough an awful lot and spread it. So if you have tuberculosis, people stay away from you, which is heartbreaking. Nobody likes to live in quarantine. Bright star. Bright star, would that I were steadfast as thou art, not in lone splendor hung aloft in the night and watching with eternal lids apart, like nature's patient, sleepless eremite, the moving waters at their priest-like task of pure ablution round earth's human shores, or gazing at the new soft fallen mask of snow upon the mountains and the moors. No, yet still steadfast, still unchangeable, pillowed upon my fair love's ripening breast, to feel forever its soft fall and swell, awake forever in the sweet unrest. Still, still, to hear the tender taken breath, and so live ever, or else the swoon to death. Like the previous one, Fears I May Cease to Be, it builds and builds and builds and then crashes at the end. And so live ever, or else swoon to death. That sense of the star is a great abstract symbol that he can't touch, an ideal he cannot reach, like nature's patient, sleepless eremite, hermit. He can never quite touch anything perfect. He can never quite reach it. And it's just sitting up there alone. He doesn't want to be either. He doesn't want to be stuck in an ideal state alone. would I were steadfast as thou art. Well, the star is going to be there long after he's dead. And on the one hand, he wants to live. He wants to be there. But what is allowing him to be there is his mortality. It's a catch-22. He wants to live forever, in a sense, but he doesn't want to be alone. And it's just the cruel irony that as somebody dying of tuberculosis, he is both alone and dying. The guy can't win. It's there is in everything he writes this yearning that it's very easy to get caught up in the biography. It's very easy to fall in love with his personal story. And he invites you to do that. His work opens itself up on that grounds. But it's about so much more, because he's appealing to that part of us that wants to fly free, that yearns for something more, that can't just live and die happy with our lot. The romantic in him pushes him for more. The romantic in him makes him yearn for grand sweeps of experience. Reality just won't let him.